Delighted to be joined today, Petra Velzeboer. Petra, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you. Kind of like we were catching up before about how long it's been and how the world has changed, kind of obviously for reasons we all know. When we first spoke, to us, you were telling us your story about your experiences. Tell me how has the last 2 years, how's it impacted you, and kind of and for us to relate your experiences and what you went through, what have we been going through which is similar over the last couple of years?
I mean, we've all been going through uncertainty, right? So the world has always been uncertain, but it just seems to be in technicolor, and also it's been affecting everyone globally, right? So I've been scaling a business, so working with a completely remote team, and I know everybody's been remote, but there's some challenges there, right? Doing everything through technology, building culture through Zoom and Teams, and in that sort of way. I'm really proud of the culture that we've built, which is one of authenticity and connection. And yes, my story probably prepared me for some of this because I've been through a little bit. And so I've been through a little bit. When I was raised, the world was supposed to end when we were every 3 years, pretty much. Yes. And so we were always in a state of like, what next, and uncertainty. So when the pandemic hit, I was a little bit like, I've been preparing for this my whole life.
This is my time.
I'm good. Yeah, I can step into this. Yeah. But I found that, there's been this real opportunity for connection because more people have had, the pet on screen, the baby, and so there's this window into each other's homes. So that's given us this opportunity, but also experiencing loneliness, isolation, burnout, the crossover between work and home. And even now in a hybrid world, it's like another evolution of, well, what does this mean? And each workplace is trying to navigate, how can we do this best for us? So we're not just going back to the way things were, but trying to use this as an opportunity for evolution.
And kind of, so a couple of questions. I think the first question is, so obviously you referenced your experiences and how that relates to the pandemic. Could people easily see the similarities, or was it something that you had to explicitly set out, or did we actually feel, oh my God, we're in this strange, I don't know how best to refer to, but this strange kind of cult-like world now where we're believing everything and kind of we're all in a state of heightened anxiety constantly?
Well, there's a lot of groupthink as well, right? So there's the hyperactivity and hypervigilance, but also the media, the messaging, like that to me felt very similar, right. To kind of helping everybody have one narrative about something and maybe squashing the variety of diverse narratives that were actually being experienced by people. So for me, that felt very connecting. When I talk to people, of course, they resonate with things like leading a double life or showing up as one person and having something else underneath, and how that can impact both our mental health, our physical health, productivity, overall well-being in general.
So from your perspective, I think, how did you lead your team? How should we lead in terms of looking after people from their mental health, from their mental health and their well-being, especially now as we move, I suppose, onto the next phase, and people are starting to have time to reflect over if we've been dealing with immediacy over the last couple of years. Now, actually, you're starting to look at it more long term and start living again. And how should leaders be looking after you from that perspective?
Yeah, so I think what's happened is this back-to-back meeting world, right? Because it's just, we're on Zoom, we're on Teams, and we're just from one thing to the next, from one thing to the next. There's no buffer in between things. So I've seen companies do this like creatively, like they put their settings to like 50-minute meetings or 25 with the intention of creating these little buffers. But often without the actual practice and boundaries, it still doesn't happen because it's like, just one more thing. And we're living in this kind of constantly on world. I mean, in my team, we create intentional space for connection. So in our weekly team meeting, we rotate, there's a different person running it. So it's not just me as the CEO, and we'll do what we call a values exercise. So somebody might bring a 5-minute meditation. Somebody might bring a mobility exercise. Somebody might bring a thing that allows us to get to know each other in a deeper way. Some people have been hired completely remote during this time, right? And those little things, within the day, rather than like, let's do the Zoom quiz, people are over it, right? I don't want to do that. I live here, right? I don't want to do that. But finding small ways to embed what we call well-being practices into your daily life, but also creating positive accountability. So we'll ask each other, what's one way you're going to invest in yourself today? Somebody might say, I'm going to get an early night. Somebody might say, I'm going to go to the gym at lunch, whatever it might be that allows us to think about good mental health, prevention, not just crisis, and what do we do when somebody's struggling. And then we'll check in with you. We'll be on Slack. Hey, did you do that thing? Did you, and trying to do as many meetings on audio, walking, moving, like we've tried to adapt our lives to enhance our well-being rather than wait. And I still see this in organizations. We wait for the crisis end, the burnout, the absenteeism. And now people are like talent retention, the big great resignation. People are voting with their feet, right? And so this is becoming one of the big challenges. So in order to prevent this kind of at the bottom of the cliff scenario, trying to fix things, we've got to use this as an opportunity to go 10, 20 steps before, proactively create cultures. And in a hybrid world, that's even more important.
And do you think, sorry, I was just going to ask, do you think it's the leaders who need to be doing that? Or do you think it's the leaders who need to be open-minded to allow their employees to lead it?
I think we all need to take responsibility for the culture in our organization, but where we lack psychological safety and leaders leading by example through their behaviors, not just signing off some budget for some well-being over here, right? But through their behavior saying, I'm going to the gym at lunch, or I'm working, like I've got kids, so I'll tell my team if I'm working late, which I will do. I'm not a proponent of like, never work past 5. That's the only way. I'm a proponent of flexible working and honesty, and as the CEO being honest about where I am, that's more powerful than anything else as far as giving people permission to also behave in a similar way. So you need both to create a mentally healthy organization.
So let me just ask, I know you were in the office the other day with the team. I know we're speaking virtually, but from your perspective, kind of as humans, innately, when we're together in person, is there any way kind of we will ever be able to get to that virtually, or is that human interaction absolutely critical, in-person interaction?
I think human interaction, intimacy, and connection are essential. Where in a hybrid world, if you are able to get that interaction from family, friends, and that physical closeness and contact, and you have more of a remote work environment, then you're getting your basic human needs met. The problem is where people aren't having that with family, perhaps they live alone, they live in the city, these sorts of things, and then it's fully remote. And that's just not healthy for our bodies. There's this great science around the prevention of burnout, which says the 20-second hug, but it relates to a pet as well, can bring your cortisol down and allow you to prevent the stacking effect of stress building into burnout. And so imagine we need human contact, right? We need to be seen. And in this situation, we're not seeing each other in quite the same way. I think we can go a lot further because sometimes people use it as a cop-out and they go, well, it's just not possible on Zoom, right? And I'm like, well, are you creating the space for this reflection and intentionality around being human together? We have to be more conscious of it in a remote setting. It is possible to an extent.
Those thoughts, Petra, thank you so much indeed for your time today. It's been lovely speaking as always.
Thank you for having me.